the city administrator was in a disciplinary process already. And it was already being handled. But because they commented saying, I like this person, I don't like this person, all those comments were used in the litigation. And it created liability. This was actually a school district. It created liability for the school district, huge liability, huge lawsuit. And the counselor who interjected and talked about that was named in the lawsuit. And the insurance company said, you exceeded the scope of your authority. You don't have the authority to talk personnel issues here, so you're not going to be covered by your insurance. Good luck with the lawsuit and getting a lawyer.
And that's safe harbor.
Safe harbor is different. That has to do with ethics laws and checking with your attorney. That's a little different. But if you exceed the scope of your authority and you're named in a lawsuit, you better hope that insurance company is extra kind to you and allowing you to stay on the city's insurance policy. Because sometimes they aren't. And then once you've stepped out of that umbrella, you're gonna get wet. And the insurance and the legal costs and the fees and the penalties will go to you personally and not to the city. And that's what I don't want happening. I am so grateful that you ran for office. Thank you. It's not often, it's sometimes a thankless job, right? And it's a hard job. I want you to be protected. So stay within your scope of authority, and you're gonna be fine. You're gonna have attorneys, you're gonna have insurance, you're gonna have the city's tort claim limitations, all the protections of the city. Once you step out of that, start plowing streets, messing with personnel issues, or acting as a city councilor when you're acting as on behalf of the city when you don't have that authority, that's when you're gonna get into trouble.
Only because I need to clarify. So the line, so say a citizen comes into a city council meeting and they're complaining about a city staff person. Is the line crossed when a council engages or when the council allows them to continue talking poorly about a city staff person?
I love that question, thank you. So it's really when the counselor starts giving his or her opinion about what should be done disciplinary wise, or that this person is a horrible person or this person is a great person. That's when it happens. But you should not have public comment on personnel issues. What you need to say, if the public wants to comment on somebody personally doing their job or not doing their job, even if it's a commendation, I just want to thank you. I think the best response is, thank you so much. Can you please save that comment for the city administrator? I'm sure he or she would be happy to hear it. It's not something that routinely comes to us.
I'd like to ask one question on that. So if a committee member, somebody outside, approaches a counselor at a meeting and says wrongful things to him, is that the proper thing to do?
What wrongful things?
Starts downgrading what I am doing, we'll say, for instance.
Oh, you're up for grabs. You're an elected official. They say all kinds of things about you.
No, I understand that, but I'm talking about another committee member, a person on a committee that you put on that committee.
Sure. So I
Isn't he
think,
wearing about the same hat?
well, I think here that's a matter of decorum rather than stepping outside your authority. And so I was talking to the mayor already, and I know you're working on council rules of order that would apply to committee members also. And it's what you expect of each other. We're gonna treat each other respectfully. We're not gonna interrupt. We're gonna call each other Counselor Whitney while we're here, even though I've known you since the second grade or whatever. We're going to act, not me personally. And we're going to act as a matter of formality. And so that's the promise you make to each other, how you treat each other. And I think that is one of the most important things you can do as a new council. To establish amongst yourself what your rules of engagement are. And I can guarantee you, if you have a professional, calm, thoughtful, compassionate and respectful, counsel, your audience and public will follow suit. They are looking to you to set the stage. They are saying, oh, this is a new kind of forum to me, I'm gonna watch what's expected of me. And you determine, all of you together determine what the expectations are.
So, something specific to, our council, so we've had a complaint process that was started towards the end of last year. And I'm going back to complaints about personnel.
Okay.
So, earlier I heard you say just direct them to the administrator. How would that personnel complaint process work with directing it back to the administrator? I mean, is it appropriate to just direct them back, or should we continue with that process, or is that okay?
So I don't know a lot about your complaint process. Are you saying that personnel complaints come directly to the council?
I believe so. There's
No.
the
No,
complaint
the
process, so I may not
process
completely
has
understand.
It has a written complaint, and council and anyone should refer them to do a written complaint on personnel. Council should never take a personnel complaint themselves. Council can take a complaint on something else, I need to look into X, Y, Z, and then refer it through the complaint process.
Sure, and I think the question was, what if the complaint process of the council has to do with staff member?
Mm-hmm.
And my recommendation would be, city administrator, here you go. But, sometimes my boards and my commissions and my councils are a little upset about that. They really want to manage staff. I always say, careful what you wish for. I think it's a tough job, and you're not set up for it. This forum isn't good for them. It's not a good manager. Now, how can you be a good manager? You can make sure that your expectations of your city administrator are crystal clear. Crystal clear. That your performance evaluations are crystal clear and given at the right time. That you're not criticizing in public. We do not criticize our employees in public. We do it in private, right? If it's a policy matter and you just disagree with what the city administrator is doing, sometimes there's an appropriate way to do that in public, and we can talk about that. But generally, you are the employer, and you need to treat that city administrator like a valued employee. And if you're not happy with the job that they're doing, there's ways to address that, of course. And we can help you when that time ever comes. The other piece about managing your city administrator that I want you to think about is appointing, by a majority vote, appointing one or two, usually one, city councilor, and it's usually the mayor, but it can be whomever, to act as the administrative between your employee, your one employee, and the council. So that if your one employee, for example, needs to take family leave or has an emergency, they know who to go to, and that person is authorized to approve certain things within certain limits. So you don't have to call a big meeting and discuss it. One of,
I don't understand.
You just lost me too.
Yeah.
I strongly recommend that the city council delegate one person to serve as your liaison to your city administrator. Meaning, if there's regular administrative pieces that come up, like your city administrator may have a family leave issue and needs to take 2 weeks off, he or she can go to that person and talk to them. Yeah,
Got it. So when the city administrator has a need, he doesn't have to contact all.
Exactly.
We can contact just the
Yeah.
mayor, and the mayor will always contact everybody, or just someone,
Yeah.
they will always contact everyone else.
yeah, or even when you delegate that authority to, say, the mayor, you could say, hey, you know what? You have the authority to approve leave, to approve absences, to do all that, but just report to us later and let us know what happened. I think that makes you much better managers, because think about it, if you were the city administrator, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bosses, and you check in all the time for even minor things.
So when you're
it's too
saying
much.
approved leave, you're talking about approve the city administrator's leave,
Correct.
not anybody else?
No, not anybody else's, no.
Okay,
Yeah,
just
well,
to
you-
confirm, I'm like,
No, just,
No, that's what
Yeah.
we deal with, is the
Got
city
it.
administrator.
yeah. So that's key, and I think every time you have to think about, you need to think, am I being a good boss? Am I providing the direction, the expectation, is it clear, am I getting good feedback, and does that person have a place to go if they have a problem? All right, the last piece, I know we're a little over, I just wanted to touch on ethics and only on conflicts of interest. Ethics is a big area of law, but I know that on the council, there are some people who have relatives who work for the city, completely okay, that's all right, but it could put you in an awkward position sometimes. The ethics rules in Oregon are a little different than most states. There are two types of issues that you could get into trouble with regarding conflicts of interest. An actual conflict of interest, and just because Oregon likes to make it confusing, something that's called a potential conflict of interest. And what that is in a nutshell is, if you are taking an action, decision, or recommendation or discussion that could put money in your pocket or your family's pocket or a business with which you're associated's pocket or somebody living in your house's pocket, or take money out of those pockets, you have a conflict of interest, an actual conflict of interest. So, example, let's say Councilor Borkham's brother owns a office supply store in town, and you are voting about whether, I don't know why you're voting on this, but you're voting about a contract that you want to give to the office supply store from the city. You would have an actual conflict of interest. And in that circumstance, you only need to know two things. You need to declare it on the record, and you need to look at whomever's taking the notes and say, I'm declaring an actual conflict of interest. Please make sure this goes in the minutes. You have to state the general nature of it. My brother owns the store. He could benefit financially from it. And then, after you declare it, which I call shouting it out, you shut it up, to be a little crass. Shout it out, then shut it up. You're not allowed to talk, debate, or vote on the matter. You're done. So, for a potential, the rules are almost the same. A potential conflict might exist where, for example, you sit on a committee and you're deciding whether to give a road paving contract to your sister. But the committee doesn't have the final say, the council does. But that's a potential conflict. You could get money to your sister. It could happen. The rules for a potential conflict are, you gotta shout it out, but you can still discuss, vote, or talk about it. The important thing to remember is if you mess up on this, it's again personal liability. And if you mess up and have been getting a financial benefit, you can be taken to the Ethics Commission, and the penalties can be up to 5 times the amount of the financial benefit. So we're talking real money here. And you don't want to be in front of the Ethics Commission, nobody does. And so one of the pieces of advice I give, if you ever come to me with a conflict of interest issue, I'll say, sounds like maybe you have a potential. You could just declare it and then go ahead and vote. But why? Do you really need to? Why not just declare, this could be an actual, or I don't feel comfortable with I'm going to abstain anyway because it's a conflict. That will avoid the appearance of impropriety, because your press and your community is watching it, right? And they know your sister runs the paving outfit, right? So I often say, just because you can doesn't always mean you should. And to be extra protective of you and your pocketbook, you can take some extra precautions. So if you have a conflict and it's a vote and you don't know if it's a conflict, talk to your city administrator. They may have you talk to me or one of our attorneys, happy to help you and walk you through it. That's the safe harbor.
Okay.
I think I might be out of time. I know I skipped around a bit.